So yes, I'm in a closet. I'm a little superstitious, but I'm also aware of the fact that what I'm about to talk about is kind of loaded, and I just want to mention that just because I don't have a Torah handy, or like a Quran, or maybe a Shiva or a Bhagavad Gita, doesn't mean that I don't respect their sacred scriptures. Okay, it's just that this is what I have on me right now. So here's what I want to say about the Holocaust. There's a lot of stuff that is floating around, regarding like all the different wars we've been in. History books, a lot of different things. Okay, what I want to say though is that when it comes to something like the Holocaust, which is really loaded, a lot of the people that feel the strongest about it usually tend to be the ones that didn't go through it. Could be some guilt there. The other thing I want to point out is that when you see Dune, do you get any feelings like they're linked with the Holocaust or the Wizard of Oz? Do those kind of stir up feelings of the Holocaust? Because they should. I haven't read Mein Kampf, but all I can say about the way that that sounds like to me is it reminds me of a noodle war, like chow mein, and also about, like a rock quarry or like mining, for some kind of like diamonds or rocks or gems, whatever. Any kind of treasure, basically. And yes, people also are considered that too, which, by the way, people get mined every day. And all it is just, it's a process that some companies have cornered the market on, and that's basically what like fuels a lot of different innovations and stuff. But it's been going on for a long time. Now, the next thing I want to point out is that the comp part reminds me of confetti. What else happens during confetti? Usually a parade of some kind. Does that kind of look a little familiar when you see like people marching in the street? And then the next thing I want to point out is that, what does this remind you of? Does it remind you of a sneeze? When a person is in the midst of an orgasm, which, by the way, that's kind of considered one of the more valuable things that a person has in terms of like, like treasure. That's usually what it means, like on the verge of sneezing. Okay. What's another thing that kind of comes to mind when you have your arm extended? Is it about space? It could be about space. It could also be about a parrot. Okay, a parrot. Another thing that it could be about too is that it's acknowledging that there's a way for us to all be kind of like part of the same universal being, so that we can kind of re-establish ourselves and not be so susceptible or vulnerable to puppetry, basically. What else did I want to say? Oh yeah. So something about the pit. When I hear the mosh pit, I immediately think of the mosh pit that I fell in, which was a Slayer pit. I went to go see Marilyn Manson and Slayer was opening. Another pit comes to mind, and that is Brad Pitt. But also it's about the pit at Jiffy Lube, which is basically the place underneath where they change the oil. When you watch Dune and you observe one of the barons, taking a shower underneath like an area, does Jiffy Lube come to mind? Because I think that it might be Jiffy Lube. That's probably why we have Jiffy, the peanut butter brand. And that's probably why we have Charlie Brown. And that's probably why we have an abandoned Birkenstock plant over in Nevada. So I say that because, who wears Birkenstocks in Charlie Brown? Peppermint patty. And why is that relevant? The Inca. That's why. When you see the Amazon rainforest, like on TV and stuff, do you think of Peppermint patty at all? When you see Machu Picchu, do you think of Peppermint patty? I don't think so. Where is our culture going? There's a show on Amazon, the network, the TV network. It's about this man that traveled from Ohio to Peru on a mission to catalog some kind of species or something. Basically Darwin. Why is that relevant? Well, for one thing, Darwin, dar, that's what that means in Spanish, to give. And then win is, obviously, that's a hybrid word, by the way. Kind of like Spanglish. So you got that going. And then you've got a quick stopover in Colombia. Why is Colombia relevant? Well, because you've got a little bit of an issue there with British Columbia and then also with the District of Columbia. And you got another issue with pretty much anywhere that has a street named Columbia that can link up to that. So if you ever wonder why Colombia has so much energy, the country, part of the reason is for our own damn fault for not realizing that when they're processing that product, the drug, they're actually processing spirits, like from the United States, all over, and they're trying to give it back in a way that is quick and fast and whatever. And, that way a person doesn't have to go through the whole process of getting steamed for the 100th time, with vegetables and stuff like that. Plus the fruit can be kind of troublesome, as we have already seen with prunes. If you didn't know that, then you might want to check out a different video that I did regarding that. But basically, yeah, prunes, convalescent homes, Alzheimer's, dementia, they're all kind of like, it's like a partnership, put it that way. But one thing that I want to mention too is about partnerships and about gang stuff. There comes a point where gangs will only get persons so far. Okay. Particularly when it comes to getting opportunities and jobs and stuff. Everyone knows that. But what they also know is that when push comes to shove, it doesn't really matter what gang a person's in, whether it's norteño, sureño, mara salvatrucha, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Crips, Bloods, there is still like a common bond there. And what I want to say about that is, if someone's trying to take advantage of one of them and another opposite gang takes notice of that, it's kind of like one of those weird situations where what would you do? Well, I'll tell you what I would do. I would blast that person as much as I possibly could online and let everyone know what kind of fucking shenanigans that person's up to, because that's fucked up. Like trying to say that they're murdering people and all kinds of shit, making them trying to make them look bad and like go rot in prison forever, when they were actually the Mara Salvatrucha that was being interviewed were actually quite innocent. And I gotta say, that was really heartbreaking to observe. But what I want to also mention is that a part of me feels like there's some issues there with maybe taking it a little personal on both sides. Okay, me too. But also that there's a little bit of puppetry happening, and a little bit of dimensional fog, put it that way, that makes me wonder if the person who was interviewing the gang members even knew like what dimension he was in. Part of it, I think, has to do with that guy who went around Peru pinning all these insects. And these insects were really heartbreaking to see, actually, for me. And if you get a chance to watch it, I'm kind of curious to see if you have the same effect or get the same effect. But something about it felt extremely wrong. But then if he hadn't done it, I wouldn't have even known. So what you gonna do? But it's like observing like ancient history kind of in your face. What are you gonna do? You know, what are you gonna do? And that it's still alive until it gets pinned or impaled. Whatever. It's just heartbreaking to observe something so alive become like a robot. Like there's this one movie that's coming out. I think it's called Megan, or Megan represents like a robot. And I think she's meant to substitute for Megan Fox. And I just want to point out that that's wrong too. And the reason is because what makes it okay to like turn the wars that we've as a country have been in, the wars and all the different experiences that soldiers have gone through, what makes it okay to turn that into to shove it all into a robot and then have that robot represent it? I mean, I don't care if it's a brutal battle that made us into these complete monsters, and that's what someone's idea is to try and punish. It still is fucked up. Okay, all our experiences, whether good or bad, they're not designed to be this game necessarily, for it to be a game of scoring, and then the score determines what happens for the next game, and how it's going to affect the progress you've made. It shouldn't be like that. If it is, it ought to be that was some fucked up shit you went through, and you know what, that makes you all the more valuable because of it. And I'm not just talking about the winners. I'm talking about the losers, especially the losers, because the losers usually end up going through some really fucked up shit. And that, to me, doesn't make the wine any more sweeter. What it does is it makes that person all the more valuable because of I don't want to say the power that that person has, because that just turns that person into the next copper top battery, right? So it's not like that. It makes that person all the more difficult to replace. That's what it is. So, yeah, we have got to get our shit together.